Welcome back to another Prep Series video, doing another weekly recap for 5 weeks out from my first show, and that will be the OCB Lone Star Rising, currently under 4 weeks as of recording this, being July 31st, and then also 7 weeks out from the Phoenician Classic through the INBF, WNBF. So just in that crunch time phase now, but as always, we'll be going through training, nutrition, have some posting content up on screen for you guys. If you guys are new to the Prep Series first video, we'll link the playlist up there. Check it out on the channel. I'm doing a weekly recap all throughout prep. So let's hop into first the training side of things, and then we'll touch on just a minor injury that we had, or I guess you could call it I guess a minor injury or tweak would be the best wording for it, but I'll throw up my first 3 days of training on screen. And ultimately, in that lower day one that you see at the bottom, the stiff-legged deadlift used to be a deficit stiff leg deadlift, and just on my last set of the exercise for that lower day, got lazy, didn't pull tension out of the bar and create tension in my lower back before starting that first rep, and just felt a little bit of a tweak in my right side spinal erector. When I was younger, I broke my tibia and fibula, forget how they pronounce the two ones backwards, but ultimately I had a lower leg injury there, fractured my ankle and dislocated my hip. And just how those bones grew back, they're about an inch longer than my left leg now. So if there's ever any tightness in my body, I tend to feel it in that right side first, and that's kind of where a lot of my different injuries and tweaks come from, is on that right side first and foremost. So it's more of like a fatigue management, me just being lazy, which we really cannot have this deep into prep, just with the body being in a compromised state. So got a little bite there, a good reality check ultimately. So going forward, we're just taking the deficit out of that stiff-legged deadlift, just to make it a bit of a safer movement. Don't get quite the same stretch and stimulus on the hamstrings, but ultimately it's going to keep me in a much safer space. And for this being such a long prep, don't want to just derail progress entirely by being stupid and trying to push it too much. So we'll be swapping out just that deficit for a normal stiff leg deadlift, and that'll probably allow me to push a bit more weight, but just going to be very tentative on that movement and see how we're feeling. Don't want it to take away from other leg movements that are spine loaded, like the Arsenal pendulum squat. So that's really the plan. Just going to kind of baby the hinge movements for a couple of weeks, see how we're feeling, and then kind of ramp up intensity there if we recover well. And then for the last 3 days of the week, the large change will come in the lower day two. We are taking out deadlift, once again, just kind of toning it back on the hip hinge movements and throwing in a 45-degree hyper. Really enjoy that movement, can get a ton of stimulus out of it for my hamstrings and glutes, while kind of keeping tension off of the lower back if needed, depending on how we're feeling. And if not, can really hyperextend and get a nice pump in that lower back. We'll be doing that weighted and kind of still feeling out that movement as a whole. So I will expect to see weights kind of go up on that, or kind of progression throughout that movement going forward. But that kind of sums things up for training. Hopping over to the nutrition side of things. For the last couple of weeks, we've kind of stayed within that 2650 to 2700 calorie range, and that's what I expect to see going forward. So what that'll kind of look like, and you'll see my last 2 weeks for exact numbers on screen, will be about 240 protein, 250 carb, and then around 75 to 80 fat, give or take that range. Cardio staying the same, which we've been doing for weeks on weeks, is 20 minutes on the incline treadmill at a 12.5 incline, 3 miles per hour, and that comes right out to that 200 calorie mark. And with that, sometimes they'll do a greater speed, sometimes they'll do a slower speed, just kind of whatever comes out to the 200 calories, give or take. And then we are kind of on a strict step count of just making sure that we're hitting at least 10,000 per day just on my Garmin watch. And the cardio will kind of make up some of that. So you guys kind of see the rate of weekly loss, but gonna throw up the posing content on screen for you guys to get a look at that. Decided that we're just gonna film it in the middle of the courtyard so I don't have any of those ugly shadows that we've had for the last couple of weeks. And that'll be a more consistent lighting, so we'll probably do that going forward. But yeah, weight of loss has been pretty aggressive. I would say at 1.76 pounds and 1.46 pounds. But just a handful of weeks out, once again, under 4 weeks for the first show, and right at 7 weeks or just under for the second. So just gonna keep that going. I expect it to kind of taper as we get deeper, just as my body kind of adjusts to that caloric and expenditure numbers and gets better at like adjusting metabolically. So we'll keep an eye on it, but kind of expecting mid to high 190s for the first show, and then kind of take it from there, and ultimately see macros kind of staying the same throughout until we get to peak week, which we'll touch on more in the future. But that really sums things up for things to touch on. Just have that minor back tweak that we'll have to keep an eye on, kind of baby out, but overall just made a ton of progression this prep, so don't want to give it back by really hurting myself. So got to be smart there, just got to stay fed, and ultimately really feeling the effects of prep at this low weigh-in, just way more emotional than normal, which is weird for me to be an even keel, but just got to stay fed, stay have faith, you know, remain high effort, and then keep discipline in as always. But really do just want to say thank you for watching all the way to the end. Make sure to like and subscribe for future prep content. Comment any comments below you have. Thank you so much again for watching. Have a great rest of your day and stay fed.